Good evening, and thank you very much for joining us this afternoon at our fifth and final community conversation about the city's Road to Zero Waste project. I'm really delighted to see such a great turnout, and we're looking forward to a vigorous conversation about the draft proposals that we have presented, which we're referring to as our core concepts. And with us tonight, we have Gary Liss and Rick Anthony from Zero Waste Associates, the consulting firm on this project, as well as Eric Lombardi. Thank you very much, Eric, for coming up. He's a subcontractor on this project as well. So we are thrilled to be having a chance to talk with you about it. We'd really like to hear what you think.
Hi, I'm Rick Anthony. This is the first draft, and it's out for public review. And those of you who have been with us through the process know that we've had a lot of public meetings. And so the process is really important to engage people in it, because we're trying to get a feeling for what you want to do and how we can do it, and base our own experience. So this is the Fort Collins Waste Reduction and Recycling Plan and core ideas on the road to zero waste. So this is where we've reviewed the existing system. We've had a first visit to Council Futures Committee, tour of facilities, second public meeting, July 2nd, visit, met with stakeholders, boards, more tours, 2 public meetings, August, analyzed policies, programs, facilities, economic impacts. September, we did the draft zero waste plan, and we're here today to sort of say this is what we thought we heard and this is what we think we could do, but the devil's in the details. We understand that, and we're going to get the details now. We're going to have a final plan drafted by November. So the idea was zero waste was reduce, reuse, recycle, focusing on reducing and reusing, then recycling, composting, digesting, redesigning, maximizing the highest and best use of resources to reinvest in the local economy, to create more wealth and jobs for residents, to help local businesses operate more efficiently at reduced costs and liabilities, and to reduce greenhouse gases. This is the overall mission of this event. Here's the definition of zero waste, and basically all discarded materials are designed to become resources, and that we want to mimic nature and not burn or bury them, and eliminate all discharges to land. This is the only peer-reviewed definition of zero waste that's been reviewed by almost every continent except Antarctica. So there's lots of businesses we've already identified that are heading towards zero in this area, and some of them are really close. Now we recognize it's a lot easier for a business to get to zero than a city, but again, the same process is involved. We looked at what's available at the landfill. I didn't make this stuff up. Boulder spent a lot of money with Cascadia to do their sort, and then Sloan Vasquez came in and did another sort. And what I did is just I lumped these in terms of market commodities to figure out what they're good. And so the key on this one is half. As you see, half of the material is something that could be a recipe for compost. And we also then took the percentages and looked at the annual tons, and then took actually very conservative numbers in terms of their value, and we estimated about $6 million of materials being dumped in the landfill. Now, as Eric will tell you, that if he had all the mixed paper, he could sort it out and get a lot more money if it was ledger and cardboard. And the same thing with the metal. We took a magnet and took the ferrous out, you got a lot of non-ferrous. But the idea is that we could sell this commodity at one thing. And the other epiphany I had was that the paper and the plastic and the metal are commodities that baled and can go out to a paper mill in town or out of town. But the reusables and the compostables are stuff that would stay in the community, be in your own local economy, and could create a lot of local jobs. And we estimate some of those as well. So what we did a service analysis, and basically I looked at what was available based on this commodity here to take things if I was just to come into town and I wanted to recycle. And so I couldn't find places to take food scraps, demolition debris. There is a nice rock that the city runs that takes in rock and makes aggregate, but not all demolition debris. Durable goods like mattresses and carpets are going to the landfill. Some types of glass, lots of plastic, painted wood, and wood in general. Actually, wood yard is pretty far away for a lot of people. Paint and other items. So we see these as opportunities because they're going to be generated, but somebody's going to have to do a business to figure out how to get them back into circulation. So based on what we heard and what we've talked about is that we don't think zero waste is a problem here, that we think that as a target, as a goal, as a journey, I think people understand that we don't think we can get to zero, but we can get darn close. And so we're looking at something like we suggest maybe by 2035, a 75% diversion by 2020 and a 90% diversion by 2025. And in order to see that in terms of landfill, so that we can look at those calculations and capital costs, it's about 95,000 tons by 2020 and 55,000 tons in 2025. Now, some people have problems with the landfill as a measurement, and they like to bring it back down to their self, and this is happening all over the world. We're looking at pounds per person per day. So from where it is at 5.2 pounds per person per day is what you generate. Now, you may not see that, but we're talking about residential and commercial. It's an average. So when you go to the store, you go to the restaurant, you're contributing to your 5 pounds. Reduce that to 3.5 by 2020 and 2.2 by 2025. So when we looked at goals of the objectives, we also wanted to look in terms of jobs, and we realized that these commodities have been, by cheap landfill, the jobs have been taken away because it's cheaper to take up to the landfill. But if we change that, we could create 150 jobs by 2020 and about 300 jobs by 2025. And when I looked at the blue skies, optimistic, getting all, it's about 434 jobs that could be, if we actually fully implemented the separation programs and then the businesses. And then the other part is greenhouse gases, and the EPA has a model that you do, that you just plug in. If it was all the mixed paper, all the mixed metals, and that's the way I looked at it, into their computer estimates, it looks about, would be 60,000 tons, million tons of CO2 would be reduced by 2020, which would be the equivalent of 12,000 cars off the road in Fort Collins. If you wanted to play that game furthermore, it'd be 120,000 tons by 2025, million tons, I'm sorry, 25,000 cars, and then by 2035 it'd be like 187 million tons, and 39,000 cars off the road. What we see is that in the plan, and listening to you and trying to get the whole Fort Collins feeling, is that choice and diversity is important. We want to come up with diverse solutions that build upon open, competitive, free market system and entrepreneur investments in new programs, facilities, and services. And I just want to say, level the playing field. That's a free market to me. Universal opportunities for all sectors, single, multifamily dwellings, industry, commercial, institution, visitors. Everybody is going to participate in this. And new rules and incentives. The city's primary role is to adopt clear goals and to facilitate, educate, and enforce the rules that are adopted.
Thanks, Rick. Next part of the presentation is going over the recommendations. The first one is about universal recycling. We basically looked at the pay-as-you-throw ordinance as a really great step forward for Fort Collins, and we're saying build on that and effectively implement that and more stuff along the same lines of what was done with the pay-as-you-throw. And what really struck us was that we were hearing from a lot of different folks that they didn't have recycling services at their apartments. They didn't have it in a cost-effective way at their businesses. So we're saying that part of the solution to that is a universal rollout of the services. For residential, we say that the yard trimmings was a concern. That not all the haulers were providing a lot of yard trimmings service. So there's a lot of yard trimmings from single-family residents still going to the landfill. So we recommended phasing in over 2 years, yard trimmings weekly for no less than 6 months of the year. And as part of the development of the next stage, offering an option for every other week collection of trash service so that people could, if they are decreasing the amount of yard trimmings going into their trash, if they could do with only trash being picked up every other week, that we should look at the possibility of doing that. For multifamily, we suggested that there should be a universal rollout of all multifamily within 2 years. For commercial, we suggested similarly all businesses within 5 years. For businesses, we also suggested an equal amount of recycling as trash service, sharing, providing authority and ability for haulers to share locking containers, particularly in downtown areas where space was at a premium, and allowing haulers to place additional recycling and composting containers in parking spaces, despite what their permit might say for their land use permit. Prohibited materials is building on the success of the cardboard recycling, recyclable cardboard prohibition currently, and the electronics that was done several years ago. So based on the success of those programs and how people have received them very well in Fort Collins, we're suggesting that the same tool could be used for other materials. So traditional recyclables, like the materials in the current single-family residential units, could be prohibited from being put in the trash. Yard trimmings could be prohibited from being put in the trash. Construction debris, all these materials could be prohibited at the point that the systems are in place locally within 20 miles of City Hall, we say in the report, to be able to handle the whole capacity for the materials that are being prohibited. So it's a tool that we recommend being considered and expanded based on the success to date. In the construction and demolition arena, there are a number of key opportunities. Currently, the building code requires a plan to be developed for C&D recycling. That we're recommending be expanded to also be appropriate for remodeling, deconstruction, and demolition for projects over 2,500 square feet. We suggested adding more materials and requiring the reuse or recycling of at least 50% of the materials, and setting up a deposit system so when contractors came in to get a building permit, they would pay money that would be refunded to them when they brought back their reports at the end of the process saying this is how much we actually recycled, as a way to strengthen the current planning requirement under the current building code. And then developing training programs for the contractors, builders, and service providers when that was rolled out. We also talked about deconstruction goals to have what we hear locally is called a soft strip, to take out all items that are portable and detachable, like doors, windows, sinks, tubs, things that are able to be taken out easily, and assist industry to develop the recycling facilities needed to handle these types of materials, C&D materials. Currently, most of this, the single material recycling is available. It's the mixed demolition materials that don't have a good facility, and that's one that we suggested later might be needed to be developed on a larger regional basis than even Larimer County and Loveland. We also suggested including strategies and disaster preparedness plans for how to recycle debris when disasters occur, and to use FEMA money, Federal Emergency Management Agency money, to help fund some of those initiatives over time. For composting, over 50%, Rick highlighted, is basically materials that could be composted, and to start and break the cycle of that's been talked about for years. We need to get composting going. We need to get food scrap composting going, but we haven't gotten the system going here yet. We're saying, first, be clear. Council policy is that we should be phasing out landfilling of organics within 5 years. The first step is to collect yard trimmings weekly, like we described earlier. The next step is helping to develop facilities that can handle food scraps and food soil paper, requiring haulers then, once those facilities are in place, to collect those materials on a weekly basis year-round, and once they do that, we would have a 2-truck system where rubbish could be picked up every other week and recycling could be picked up on the alternate weeks, so that's a 1-truck system, and then the organics be picked up weekly. So overall, you would need a fleet for those hauling the materials of a 2-truck system. Developing, while all this is going on, develop more pilot composting and digestion programs is recommended as well. And those pilots we already see, the Earth Tub, Earth Flow, digesting the pulp food scraps from CSU at the Drake Wastewater Treatment as examples of the types of pilots, doing more of that with different types of feedstock, different locations, different players, everyone being supported with the city in moving those forward, not necessarily funding all that, but support in helping to facilitate the development of the pilots. On reduce and reuse, we've highlighted that zero waste is all about focusing on reducing and reuse first, and then recycling, composting, digesting, and redesigning the rest. Some of the ideas were more in the promotion arena for reusable shipping containers and returnable pallets for businesses. It's a huge opportunity. Most businesses save immediately and large amounts of money by going in that direction. The move-ins and move-outs is a key opportunity. We just met with the North Colorado Rental Housing Association, and they underscored that this is a particular need, although it was highlighted earlier this afternoon how CSU has a model program that could be a model for expanding further. And reducing wasted food and supporting food donations. We met with the food bank for Larimer County yesterday, and they're really excited about getting more of a partnership going with the city, with other stakeholders on reducing wasted food. 1 in 7 in Larimer County don't know where their next meal is coming from, called food insecure. 1 in 6 Americans don't know where their next food is coming from. 40% of all food in America is wasted. These statistics are astounding. When we talk about the triple bottom line impact and the social benefits that come from reusing these resources more productively, we highlighted in the core concepts that wasting of food is the epitome, the ultimate in what we're trying to get at. How can we stop that wasting from going on? How can we get it to the people who really need it? Waste to clean energy, we had a community conversation about that, found out what the costs were for that, that there's a large variety of different types of facilities out there. We recommended that the city develop a hierarchy of highest and best use to assist in evaluating proposals that come to the city. There's lots of vendors that are proposing doing different things with materials that can produce energy, and we think the next step at this moment in time is developing that hierarchy to provide some guidance for how the city responds to proposals that come forward. In addition, work with the university, CSU, to research and pilot innovative technologies for different applications. This goes to the heart of what Rick highlighted. One of the core ideas we have, the value of choice and diversity, that there's no one big box solution for everyone, for everything. There's lots of different innovative things going on in Fort Collins, and rather than having winners and losers, we're saying let's help everyone develop new ideas and be part of the solution as creatively as possible. Culture change is a big one. Rick highlighted that we're working towards, and an example of that in the picture is of tandem bins for both trash and recycling, placing them all over wherever city service public trash bins are with comprehensive signs we talk about. But the whole idea of the culture change is all about community-based social marketing. It's all about changing people's view of these as problems to resources, as opportunities, to create jobs, to reinvest wealth into the community, to provide opportunities for entrepreneurs to come forward with their best ideas and get a piece of all those resources to do wonderful, innovative stuff, which I always like to highlight my tie as an example of reused wood on reused jeans. Just to highlight, there's lots of value-added possibilities out there. To get to that culture change, we need to do a lot of awareness, education, training, and enforcement. These are 4 key aspects of helping to move towards the culture change, with some staffing to help the city staff work on that, city develop materials to distribute, for the haulers to distribute, for others to distribute, to help make it clear when anyone walks around town, they should get the feeling this is a zero-waste community. We care about our resources. We care about our economy. We care about the social benefits that come from zero waste. And that's what the culture change will be working to reinforce, requiring all venues and events with over 1,000 attendees to meet zero waste standards. I asked Eric Lombardi to go over the next couple of slides to highlight a couple of other key points.
So this is one of the trickier parts of the change that comes to a zero waste community, because let's realize what the goal is. The goal is we have 140,000 tons going to the landfill. We're calling for getting 90% of that out of the landfill. We have an existing zero waste economy here, as Roger and others have, we know that, but to get 90% of that out of the landfill, it's not going to be business as usual going forward. So this whole idea of reinvesting resources in the local economy, we're talking about the new tons. So what we want to do is go forward and build on the existing zero waste economy and get the new tons. We don't want to threaten the innovators and the people already doing good work. And that's more easily said than done. But the reason we're doing this is because we have community benefit and personal benefit in our local economy. In our economy, obviously, the market signals aren't getting us where we want to get, so that's why we have community benefit to a zero waste town. That's what we have to balance here. So we bring in the economic development staff folks to sit down, talk business with the local zero waste economy. We focus on the new things, the wood, C&D, food, all these things that are getting landfilled right now. That's where we bring our focus. Also, of course, incredible resource here in town, CSU, you've got a business school here, you've got an engineering school here, you've got a whole bunch of people that can sit down and tackle this idea of zero waste economy development in Fort Collins. And then the social service organizations, that's something that I've experienced. These are social enterprises, double bottom line businesses who are making maybe 10% profit, but they really exist for landfill diversion and job creation. So the waste stream is really a resource stream to create social enterprise and jobs. Totally different subject now, product stewardship. Again, this can be conflictual. We just went through it in Boulder where we created a polluter pays fee on single-use paper and plastic bags. It is not a tax because you don't have to ask for a bag. So you're choosing to use a bag and you're choosing to pollute when you take a single-use bag. So we created a fee and we're changing behavior that way. And we're raising some money that then goes into education programs. So I think this whole idea about fees on products, like Europe has packaging taxes, I think that's how you start to help people move their behavior in the direction of a zero waste community. CSU banning plastic bottle waters on campus. I mean, CSU, it's the perfect socialist nation. So in a lot of ways, you get to do what you want to do up there. So I think, you create a universe up there and you lead by example. CU's done it before. And before you ban anything, have a plan.
On funding, we said that a lot of this will happen through the free market by people coming forward with their services, what cost for their facilities. Entrepreneurially, they'll put out there what they need to charge for their services. To back it all up, however, we are recommending a recycling, education, and investment fee on waste hauling services or waste ship for landfilling, with part of the proceeds going for city outreach and education, expanding the integrated recycling facility into a resource recovery park, grants and, grants and loans to private businesses and nonprofits for reuse, recycling, and composting, and helping haulers implement programs. This is based on lots of communities have done this all over the world for fees on either waste hauling, waste landfill costs to help fund new programs. In Europe, the average is $20 to $40 a ton is added on as a landfill surcharge in order to phase out the organics from landfill by 2016, which was a landfill directive adopted in 1999. So this is a common tool in our neighboring community of Loveland. They have a $7.50 per household environmental fee that funds some of these types of programs. The last recommendation is regional cooperation. We talked about this before on a number of these projects. The city can't do it by itself. We'll need to work together, both public and private, and with other government partners to collaborate and not duplicate infrastructure. Working with the county and city of Loveland particularly has been a long-term partnership on a landfill. Possibly that could be expanded for some of the other facilities that are needed, and then work more broadly than Larimer County on a C&D recycling facility to respond to natural disasters, particularly for mixed debris.
I want to remind people the schedule. We're going to be visiting with the council on November 26th about this proposed set of recommendations. And so between now and then, we'll continue to accept your comments. Please don't hesitate. Give us a call, 221-6265, or drop off a comment on our website. I am really looking forward to hearing now the kind of comments and follow-up questions that you folks have.
Hi, I'm Maureen, and I work part-time at the landfill in the Education Center. And so I want to mainly comment on 7, culture change. And I also in the past worked for the City of Ann Arbor Solid Waste Department, where when I had that job years ago, we figured out that one of the most important things was just educating the public. And at the landfill, we experience so many problems with just under the current system, people not knowing what is recyclable, not understanding things. I had a lady come in today who was sure that styrofoam was recyclable. And so I'm just appreciative that the city is doing this. I think we all do need to be helping one another. We need to be working together. And so I think it's a great idea, too, about the fees that you mentioned, but I think also we're not talking enough about incentives. And I think if you provide people with some kind of incentives, even with the education, maybe if someone was able to do a workshop, or if a resident could attend a workshop and then get a discount on their hauling, or even we notice, and this may be true, I believe, that the 3 haulers don't even have the same pamphlet that they give out to residents. So I think we're so behind the 8 ball with recycling our residents in Larimer County that it's just incredible to me. And I do this all the time, and we see over 4,000 people a year. And this is, what we're trying to get the word out, and we don't ever seem to get it out. So, so I just want to comment how important that is to us. So.
I would just like to respond to the 3 haulers not having the same information. In our plan, we recommend that the city develop educational materials with a consistent message that the haulers would then distribute. So that's part of the education work that would be funded by the recycling fee, would help them develop professional quality materials to go out through all the haulers' distribution.
Hi, my name is Jessica. I actually work at Colorado State University, but did a graduate thesis on waste to clean energy. I guess I have 2 quick questions, and I know that my friend Stacy here will agree with me when we say, like, there's a lot of contamination in the recycling, and maybe this goes to Maureen's point, is, more education about that, because I see it with my tenants all the time, and some more tools, I think, for just people to increase awareness about contaminated recycling equals landfill and what those kinds of ramifications are. And if you don't know if it's recyclable, then, you know, what should you do? And of course, we need to be more educated, but it's one of those things you see all the time. The other thing that I guess I didn't see a whole lot was what kinds of activities the city is doing sort of on the procurement side. I cannot tell you how many restaurants I go into and ask for a to-go box, and it's styrofoam. And there are so many alternatives. There is a plan. There is alternatives. And I just refuse it. And I say, I don't want if it's styrofoam, because I know that I can't do anything with it. So it seems like on the other side, on the upstream side, there should be a lot more work done with not even generating those materials in the first place. Then we don't need a plan to recycle them because they're not in our community.
That's come up in the last couple of days, the question of maybe we should have a ban on disposable foodware in fast food restaurants. I'm curious what this group feels about that. It's again the city making rules, but I think it's probably a good idea.
My name is Janice Oldemeyer, and I'm with IT Refresh, a local electronics recycler. And I think one thing we need to make sure is at least looked at is if we're going to divert 90% of the material from the landfill, ensuring that it is responsibly recycled and that the method in which it's recycled is better than putting it in the landfill. You know, recycling is always considered a great thing, but the truth of the matter is internationally it isn't always a good thing. You know, if we're going to take our electronics out of the landfill, put them on a ship, send them to a developing country and cause environmental and human harm, is that better? Waste tires are a similar issue. You can send them to China all day long. They're not recycled in an environmentally responsible manner. So I think it is important that we don't just take it out of our landfill and keep our land and air and water clean, but that we make sure that where it's going is doing the same thing.
Would you advocate the city then doing inspections on marketing for the private sector, or
You know,
how do you do that?
I don't have a great solution. I would say number one, try to create local infrastructure, put priority on recycling, demanufacturing locally. That's not always possible. Manufacturing happens overseas, and therefore products that are recycled generally end up overseas to go back into the manufacturing stream. But the more emphasis we can put on local recycling, demanufacturing, using certified facilities, ISO certified facilities, other certifications, you know, it's a hard one to address because the truth of the matter is a lot of recycling doesn't happen here in the U.S. and very little of the manufacturing does. So
Right.
It's a tough thing to crack. But when you talk about trying to have a level playing field, you know, it's very hard to compete.
Well,
if
a
things
good
are being-
suggestion on the ISO certified. I think that's, you know, at least that puts everybody under the same standards.
Right.
I just want to respond on the priority for manufacturing. We did highlight in the Reinvest Resources section to focus on local, and particularly for reuse and manufacturing, where most of the jobs are. 80% of the manufacturing is done overseas now, all over America, and 49% of all the jobs in recycling are in manufacturing. So that means the majority of the jobs are overseas. So that's why we suggested focusing on manufacturing, and reuse creates 75 to 250 jobs compared to one at a landfill. So reuse and manufacturing is what we're focused on. But all these other ideas, the certified facilities we included in the C&D discussion as one of the tools, but great suggestions to make those a priority. And on the procurement, we didn't really, we had some preliminary ideas on procurement, but we haven't incorporated them in the core concepts. So we'll take a look at that further.
Yeah, that was a good suggestion.
My name is Ariana, and I appreciate that the city is taking these steps and taking the initiative to lead in creating a zero waste community. I'm just curious, I feel like I'm in information overload. There's obviously a lot of complexity that feels like a BHAG of a goal, and that's fine. But I'm wondering if it's possible to summarize in 1 to 2 sentences why we are doing this.
For the children, how about that? And secondly, we want to reduce the impact we have on the land, air, and water. And so that's reducing greenhouse gases. It's also creating jobs and creating resources for the future. I'm just curious what anybody thinks of. I mean, the fact that we have a landfill and that we're dumping things in the land, what does that mean for the future of our environment? So that's the quick answer.
And in one of our early slides that Rick went over, we talked about the highest and best use of the resources to reinvest them in the local economy for creating wealth in the community. So that was a message we heard loud and clear that resonated every community conversation, that this isn't just about landfilling and pollution, it's about creating jobs, investing these resources, and using them productively locally.
I'd like to go back to the to-go containers.
Okay.
At CSU, we fought for a good 5 years with all of the entities about styrofoam containers, and we won.
Yeah, there you go.
Everything at CSU, all of the vendors have to use compostable materials for their to-go boxes and cups and stuff like that. So it is possible to do it. It is a fight because it winds up costing them a little bit more, but the more demand, the lower the cost goes.
So this was a procurement thing from the university, right?
Yes.
So there's an example of how a preferable environmental procurement system could work.
Question, you had mentioned number 3, leveraging some FEMA dollars to, in the future, build future C&D
What's your name?
recovery. Aaron.
Aaron?
And I was just wondering, you know, we're in the middle of a natural disaster here, and we've got FEMA people all over the place. So
Exactly.
how
That's what I
do you,
mentioned.
is it a grant program? Because never once have I heard the FEMA people saying, oh, we'll give you money to help you in the future
Yeah.
recover this waste.
It-
It's, we'll help you build to where you were before disaster, but
Right.
not improvement. So can you enlighten me where we can,
Yeah,
how we leverage this money?
Yeah, FEMA does grants. They did set up the C&D recycling infrastructure in Los Angeles, small town, Southern California, when they had the 1994 Northridge earthquake. The city was right on the ball. They had a C&D goal, C&D recycling goal. They had the policy in place. They immediately applied to FEMA, got money to community recycling and resource recovery. They built a facility. They stockpiled stuff while the facility was being built, and then they ran all that debris through it. When the hurricanes came in Hawaii, FEMA money was used to build a resource recovery park. Unfortunately, that park has never achieved its ultimate goal because of local politics, but again, another FEMA grant for a resource recovery park. It's possible, it's been done, it's something you should be you could be planning for that opportunity. In the plan, we suggested, even though we're still we're getting a little bit away from the immediate flood impacts, it's possible that the right person at the right place could make the case, like Eric from Boulder, could make the case to the right person at FEMA that maybe one of you knows, because you have connections with your congressman or senator or something like that. That's what it's going to take for the immediate project to figure this out immediately. Whether that would benefit Fort Collins or not depends on where something might get developed, and that gets into a whole other level of complexity. The key question to ask right now is getting some political juice behind asking the question, FEMA, can you clean this up and recycle it, not bury it? Meanwhile, we recommend in the C&D section, get this into disaster preparedness plans, get your policy pre-approved, start the dialogue now so you're ready for when the next disaster hits, everything is ready to go so that the FEMA money can be used for this purpose.
It just occurred to me that this project idea is perfect for CSU. You get some MBA students, you get some planning students, you get an effort together to pull together how do we get FEMA to get us ready for the next one. And then I think you could bring that to the city and say, look what they created, you know, let's get it rolling.
Mike Prusnick, Fort Collins Citizen. I had 3 hopefully quick comments. Number one is I'd like to see the core concepts reordered. I'd like to see culture change, reduce, reuse, and product stewardship up near the top and the economic aspect down at the bottom, because there's already a lot of focus on economics leading the way in other places. And I'd like to ask you to be careful about your definition of single use, because there's a lot of things I hear as single use, but there's a lot of people who have found alternative uses for them. And so when we start talking about banning them or putting fees on them, we really need to do the analysis on how many times do I have to reuse it before it actually makes sense.
Right.
And then on the fees issue, at a certain point, I can't afford any more overhead. And there's just continuing more taxes, more fees, more inflation goes up. And at some point, you know, that's going to break the system. We saw during the Great Recession how much California suffered and how well Colorado and especially Fort Collins did, relatively speaking. And in many ways, that was because we had lower overhead and lower taxes. And when those revenues stopped, we didn't have to stop. We were able, in fact, we were able to give ourselves a tax raise. So we need to be careful about that in terms of fees. Thank you.
So what's a single-use disposable thing that you can use over and over again? Are you talking about styrofoam?
Bags.
For example, the single-use grocery bags, we reuse them for lunch bags for the kids. We reuse them for trash bags. We use them for picking up dog poop, things like that. And so sometimes you only get one extra use out of it. Sometimes you get a lot. And in that particular case, the trade-off is for the reusable bags to be effective, I have to keep them in my car all the time, so I have one whenever I go to the store. And you know, it might not seem like a lot of weight, but if we got, you know, I don't know what, 100,000 million of them in everyone's trunk, that's like a semi-truck full of them, right? So there is an aggregate fuel being used on those, right? I don't know what the number is, I don't know what the data is, but right now I feel reusing is better, so, you know, when I get the data that says otherwise, I'll be willing to shift, but, you know, it's, as you said, education.
All the plastic bag ordinances, there's like 70 in California adopted banning single-use plastic bags because the state preempted the city from adopting fees because of the bag manufacturers going to the legislature. So about 70 communities have banned plastic bags. All of them have very clear definitions of what, how many times constitutes reuse versus single use. So it's definitely an important issue. If this went forward, there's lots of precedent and information and studies documenting how to address that.
They're going through all of China. It's really the thin bag is the issue. All of China, and I was just back from a European forum, and EU is going to ban the real thin plastic bags all over Europe.
Hello, this is Randy Van Winkle again. I had just a couple of comments. I do my work in setting up recycling programs for business, and obviously affecting behavioral change is a significant part of, you know, having some of these successes. And one of the things that we do on a business scale is to look at every avenue of opportunity for education. So if, you know, mass email is appropriate at the site, you know, we'll take advantage of that. If they have, you know, LCD screens in the lobbies, we'll take advantage of that. Desk drops, you know, basically we look at every opportunity and see if that's going to be viable. So I would encourage you to take a look at what those opportunities are on a community basis. I'm sure you have already, but would like to encourage that. And then my second point, I don't know if this was touched on or not, but I visited the Charm Center in Boulder. I think that's such a great facility and would like to see that explored for this project as well.
Just to clarify, the Charm facility, maybe Eric, you can describe that. The IRF, the Integrated Recycling Facility, is intended to be charming. And just have called it something different, but we'll accept many of the things that are accepted at the Charm, which Eric will describe.
Just briefly, the CHARM is an acronym for the Center for Hard to Recycle Materials, and we set it up 12 years ago as an alternative to the landfill. It does not make a profit, just like a landfill doesn't make a profit. We charge people $3 a car to use it, but I compared it with our local transfer station the other day, where you could bring in a carload of white block styrofoam, which we do recycle in Boulder, and the transfer station would charge you $29 to landfill it, and we charge you $3 to recycle it. So there's a theory, if you get a big pile of any one item, somebody's going to want it. That's what we founded Charm on, and it's working. We recycle yoga mats because we found a local business that cleans them and uses the yoga mat as padding inside iPhone and iPad cases. So that's what government can do, is help consolidate QQR, quantity, quality, and reliability. Government policy brings together these resources. Private sector will do something with them. So that's what Charm's working on.
Yeah, Joe Peisman, I'm with the City NRAB. So somebody described this as a kind of beehive of a plan. There's a lot, and the ultimate goal is to get down to zero waste, but what's the low-hanging fruit in your opinion? What are the 1, 2, 3 first items that we could get started working on? Obviously, the opt-out yard waste is one, mandatory recycling for commercial perhaps a second, but so what are the easy things? You know, we've done cardboard.
It's not easy, but they're on the top. We've been talking about reduce and reuse for a long time, and we have in our plan. So the food bank has 4 big trucks. They collect food. People come in and get food, but there's a huge opportunity from the restaurants and the hospitals to actually take food to people. And so one of the what we think is warm and fuzzy, but it's real, is taking your food discards and making sure, you know, on the top of the hierarchy, it's feed people, feed animals, and then feed the land. Don't feed the landfill. So we want to start with one of the highest levels, I think, as far as social gathering would be on the food. The other thing is on reusables. You have a really high rate of reusable materials going to the landfill, higher than most places I've ever seen. This is local opportunities to put people to work in terms of selling materials, repairing materials, and even dismantling them for recycling. So that's, to me, that's those two, the food and the food at the top of the chain, and the reuse and the repair of the reusables, these are on the top of the chain. You want to jump in here?
And those would be best helped as low-hanging fruit through the recycling education and investment fee. Basically, if the city goes for doing that fee, it'll have the resources to do grants, loans, startup funds, pilot programs, get the charming earth off the ground, get the education out there. We heard throughout this process, education, education, education. Everyone agrees on that. Sometimes it's a hard sell for additional fees. Mike's making that point. But if the city had more resources to help in these things, you could help the food bank buy another truck like San Francisco did. They say they're getting about 50% of the materials that are out there, so there's a lot more that they could get if they had another truck. And facilitating and helping them with city staff resources, helping on outreach to restaurants and so forth. To me, you know, that's an example. Resource is another example on the reusable side, like Rick was saying. If it had some grant and technical assistance and economic development support, that a recycling fee would provide the ability for the city to help them in some way, that could be great. Resource has announced that they're closing their Fort Collins operation in December. That is just a shame, just as we are highlighting it as one of the great things that we're looking for. To me, the culture change reinvestment of the resources, particularly focused on the immediate reuse needs of food and the used building materials, really are, to me, really low-hanging fruit. The bigger ones that will take more time are the universal recycling, the C&D facility, and the composting facility. Those are the big-ticket items. I would say they're the next hanging fruit, not the lowest ones. They're more like the apples than the peaches.
The low-hanging fruit also is to gather your existing zero-waste economy, Roger and Sean and everybody else in this room that's already part of what we're talking about, and ask them, how do we double what you're doing? Because you're already doing it. And don't recreate the wheel. Let's take the existing human resources in this room and in this community, sit them down and say, what do you need to double what you're doing? How do we do this together? Resource is about to close shop. That's crazy. You know, you can't let that happen. You got to it's a fantastic used building material project. We have one in Boulder. You need it in this town. So that's low-hanging fruit. The people that are already doing zero waste work, double them, you know, work with them.
Mark Haudeshelt, a citizen. I had a few suggestions for things that could be added or discussed as part of the plan, but I don't want to take up too much time. So instead I want to focus on a question I had about the overall goals of that you had suggested that the city adopt. You had suggested 3 different goals, and I was kind of curious why you decided to do 3 sets of goals instead of just one. Because, for example, I looked at the goal for is it 2030, and it seems like you can hit one of the goals, but you're not going to hit the other. For example, if you hit the waste per person, per capita goal in that year, the only way you're going to hit the tonnage is if the population of Fort Collins drops between now and then, and I'm pretty certain that's not going to happen. So to me, it's a little confusing to have 3 different sets of goals for the city rather than a single one. I was wondering if you could describe why you did that.
Why we did it was in talking through the community conversations, the working group, stakeholders, people said there were needs for monitoring different things. And the per capita, as an example, is intended to enable you to see how you're doing even though you're growing. A lot of businesses are going in that direction. They have per unit of output is the way they're measuring their performance. And that's where Toyota says recycle some, recycle more, recycle less. Because as you do more and more recycling, you find the best payback is not in recycling, it's reducing and reusing. And reducing and reusing don't show up in typical diversion calculation. So you need more than one tool to have a 3-dimensional view of what's happening in the marketplace. That was the thinking. Whether that is what's best, we'd welcome your input.
This is Roger Hageman again with Hageman Earth Cycle. Eric, your response or your statement to use local vendors and let the private industry take over that would be, I appreciate that, and we are ready, willing, and able to do that. But let me just give you an example of what we have been facing for quite a few years. And I know this may be new to some, but maybe old to other people, and I don't mean to beat a dead horse, but when we wanted to expand our facility, we put plans before the city. The city found out, so they came in and bought the land so we could not. Since then, we were going to, at some point, put up a asphalt shingle recycling. Since that time, we've had about 4 major hailstorms in the area, and I don't know how many thousands of tons have gone to the landfill. I can't compete with government if they're not on the same page. I can't go out there and take land we had land right beside us that we could have done that with. So that's one good example for me of why it hasn't been done. The hailstorm we've had here recently, I've seen thousands of tons go to the landfill because there's no place to go with the asphalt shingles. I talked to people who would buy the ground asphalt shingles for fuel in their asphalt. That they were, at least when I talked to them, they were certainly open to that. I think that's a very real possibility, a very real thing to do. So that's one area I think needs to be dealt with. Thank you.
The asphalt shingle thing is a conundrum in this business, and I've seen 3 or 4 projects that have started up and didn't work. But a lot of it has to do with the air rules and having to change the mixes, and that. So it's a standardization issue. But I think you're right on the right track. What goes through my mind is maybe some You know, at the Monterey has a big giant landfill and a giant sewer treatment area. It's a giant piece of land at that coast. And
437 acres.
How much?
437 acres.
437. So, they take they have a drop-off center for the reusables, and then the MRFs and the C&D. And what they do is then they rent land out to other entrepreneurs that take their feedstock and make products out of it. And if land is the issue, then maybe there's some way that, you want to jump in on this one? Yeah. Because this is your thing.
I was just thinking about what Roger said, and I can really relate. Land's not the issue. The issue is working with the public sector. And I think that's the challenge of the day, because we're messing with the market here, right? And so the public officials who are absolutely educated and well-meaning don't necessarily know how to go forward either, right? Going public-private partnerships are tricky. I've seen it in Scotland work the best, because what happened in Scotland was the highest level of government said we're pursuing zero. So every city under it got the message that they had to have a real zero waste plan. So the reason I'm speaking right now is because this is the reason why you need the city manager and the city council to really buy into the vision and the goal, so that the staff gets the message all the way down the line, not to mess with the entrepreneur who comes in with a good idea to pursue the city goal. That's why city goals are so important, to help what you just said, because otherwise staff doesn't have the power to really help you unless the boss, the city manager and the mayor and the council says help them, okay? So I've seen it, I've been part of it. Leadership from the top is absolutely essential. So the head of Fort Collins needs to buy into this plan, so staff can then really link arms and do public-private partnership, because that's the challenge right now, is a new way of doing business to get where we want to get.
New Zealand's another great example. When they were adopting zero waste all over New Zealand, they had a lot of engineers and public works officials who were real naysayers and thought this was a crazy idea. But once their elected officials had adopted zero waste, they became the most innovative people because they had new marching orders. They now were told to do stuff that they weren't told to do before. So all of a sudden, they became great resources and assets in figuring out how to get things done. That's what engineers are. And ingenious development is what I come from an engineering background. What can I say?
Hi, I'm Don Tiller. I work with two local companies, one called Recycle That, another called Cycla. We recycle clothing, shoes, books, and essentially the waste stream of thrift stores. And so we work both on the front end with consumers as well as the back end for what thrift stores can't sell to consumers. So interesting business. I'll pick up on a comment you made about messing with the market. I think the city needs to be extremely cautious, or any governmental organization needs to be extremely cautious when they start messing with the market. Really, when you look at recycling, what you're doing here is right on target. We need to be doing it. But when it really comes down to it, I hate to say it, but our culture is one of convenience and economy. So if it's convenient to recycle, people will recycle. If it's not convenient, they're going to slip things in the trash that they shouldn't be slipping in. So I kind of bristle when I hear about punitive costs. I think costs that are presented that have a good purpose, good validity, are the right way to go. But anytime we start moving away from that, I think you're messing with the market in a way you get unintended consequences. And an example I'll give is several years ago, the city of Fort Collins changed the land use code to limit the number of parking spaces at a commercial building, as opposed to require a minimum number of parking spaces. And the goal was to create more bicycle usage. The problem is that what you measure is what you get, and we actually had a couple of developments come through that had zero parking. And all of a sudden you had neighbors that were complaining that rather than people riding their bicycles to use the business, what they would do is they would park in the residential areas and walk over. And so I just caution you to be real cautious as to how you approach any legislation here. Now, a couple ideas to suggest, and this comes from my industry, is one, to make it more convenient for new developments. You might consider an ordinance that would require some type of recycling resource center at multifamily developments. I think that's something that could really help the cause and make it more convenient for people. You might even extend that to single-family developments where there's a community center or swimming pool or something like that. Make it convenient for people to do the recycling. The other idea for an ordinance that I'd like to suggest is we put collection boxes out, and there's a number of companies that put collection boxes out in the community for people to donate clothing. Some operators are not conscientious in how they service their boxes, and there's a number of cities that are starting to respond by banning boxes in the city. And you know, the only time a city will bring up an ordinance is if it's to address a problem. Well, we would like to suggest that you adopt an ordinance that has a code of conduct that requires box providers to follow a certain set of rules. A lot of cities are doing this now, and I think what it does is it helps prevent the recycling from becoming a nuisance. Other ideas is, you know, I work a lot with Habitat for Humanity on the west side of town. They get dumped on all the time. Mattresses, TVs, things that cost to recycle. And so to the extent that the city could tighten up the requirements for people that are illegally dumping so that you could actually go after people and make it economically unattractive for them to do the dumping, I think that would be beneficial. So, you know, in the end, the city's role should be to provide self-safety and services for the people of the city of Fort Collins. And so I would just encourage you to continue to look at that as the framework you work behind and push. I think education is good. I think some services are good. I think ordinances are good, but I personally would avoid the penalty type costs to encourage people. I'd find ways to make it economically attractive for them to recycle.
We actually at the apartment association asked how many apartment complexes actually had that kind of material exchange, and we actually found a couple of them. Not a lot of them, but I think it's a great idea.
My name is Karen Murray Boston. I'm one of 3 owners of a business called Three Painted Ladies.
Oh,
we
all right.
recycle usable latex paint. It's not what you think. We're a new startup business, but we're finding there's a huge demand, like you're obviously identifying in your plan here, for recycling paint, reusing it, and then we reprocess it. So I think we fit the model that you're looking at very well here. And we're very encouraged by the plan because Susie actually reached out to us and invited us to come to this meeting and be part of the plan, the solution, the whole process. And so we're excited about that because in our projections, we are seeing our company growing by leaps and bounds within the next 6 months, which means we're employing people who are paying their taxes and supporting the community. So I just want to say thank you to Susie and thank you for the open forum here. We're excited.
So how do you get your paint? Hold on a second. I got some questions for you. So do you have a warehouse in town now?
We have a warehouse in the county, and we reach out to businesses, to local painters, property managers, individuals. I mean, everybody in this room, I can imagine there's probably within 100 containers of usable latex paint in everybody's basement. So we reach out to people. We're currently working with a number of different painters who have given us their paint because we take the paint for free from individuals, from businesses, from anybody. We then reprocess that paint, remix it into different colors. We're in our R&D stage right now, working actually with Metro Paint in Oregon, which is a huge paint recycling company that is run by the state. So it's a very exciting industry and growing. This country is actually behind the times when it comes to recycling latex paint.
On Paint Care just rolled out in California a stewardship organization for take back, which is another thing in the background to be thinking about.
That's something that, again, you have to be careful of because Paint Care is a nonprofit, and they actually go in and work with the state totally, and they do discount the individual companies that are doing this. So we're hoping to actually look at a partnership with individual cities throughout Colorado and also the state.
Are you involved with the Colorado State effort on paint right now?
We have reached out to the woman in Boulder who is working on that. And yes, so we are going to be working with that paint sustainability and stewardship program.
Okay, so do you know how it's going? Do you have an
Not
opinion
so far.
yet? Okay.
Not so far.
Just want to make sure you
But
knew,
I'll let you know.
knew about it. No,
Okay.
I'm watching it too. I wanted to make sure you knew about it.
What's your opinion?
Well, we're seeing the whole extended producer responsibility thing, EPR, having this challenge of moving in to do the right thing and disrupting an existing zero waste economy that's already sprung up. We're seeing it in Vancouver. We're seeing it all around the world.
Right.
In Europe, it was just top down, boom, everybody does it, okay? And it's not necessarily the way it's going to happen in America. So EPR in our culture is going through growing pains right now. And so I think that the Colorado effort needs people like you to be there to make it happen correctly, because the European model doesn't work here. And so we need people to make it right here. Does everybody know the concept of EPR? Yeah, the manufacturer has to take it back. Okay.
How timely, John, my name. EPR, that's what I kind of was going to say. How many people here are part of the 1%? Raise your hand. We must have some 1%ers in here. That's going right to the cultural change. We're playing around in their scraps, basically. And they're not concerned about these things, are they? Eric, you ever see them playing around in these scraps? They're the ones that produce it. We're playing with we're trying to figure out how to deal with their trash.
That's too simplistic.
That's
too simplistic.
Well, it is.
All of us consume. All of us create waste.
And nature creates
it's true,
most of it.
The more wealthy you are, the more waste you create. That data is true. But all of us are part of this. So I think the 99%, when you put together the amount of waste the 99% create, I'm sure it's bigger than the 1%.
I got to confess.
No, I'm not saying the corporations are manufacturing the things that they've got us to buy, and that we're dealing with the marketing. All the stuff at Kmart that ends up in the landfill in 9 months after it comes out the front door, that kind of stuff is what I'm talking about. Nature,
okay.
I'm cool with the composting and all those things, because nature's making that. It will take care of it whether we like it or not. It's the things, the man-manufactured things that are left for us. We're subsidizing them, the people who are producing it, the cradle to cradle, the EPR, those kinds of things. That until we change this culture, messing with that market, he's saying not to mess with.
Yeah.
Will these things change?
Well, the next great revolution is to define this thing called sustainable consumption. And people have been working on that for 15 years, and they can't come up with a good definition. So if you really want to make a contribution to the world, figure out what sustainable consumption looks like.
So the word they use in Europe is called decoupling, and the idea is that we're on this train track heading towards consumption and scarcity and all that, and we need to decouple off that track and change our whole way to go.
Okay, thank you for that word, sustainable consumption. I don't want to say anything bad about the food bank. I love that place, and it came up in some of your promos. You mentioned Kids Cafe. But I do want to talk about the procurement and the food and the consumption convenience. I've been volunteering at the food bank now for a year. I quit my university position at CSU so that I'm free to be out of the top-down approach, and I'm more independent. So one comment I wanted to say about the food bank work was kind of a dilemma for me. I was going there, putting my work, driving 20 miles to the food bank. But when I was there, we would produce food at the Kids Cafe, which would go out for lunch for 20 children. But in every bag of food that was made, we would, let me exaggerate and say there would be 5 to 6 pieces or up to 10 pieces of non-food items. So a Ziploc for 5 pieces of carrot, a Ziploc for 2 pieces of peach, a Ziploc for something else, a brown bag, a mayonnaise bag, a ketchup bag, all because it was supposed to go out somewhere, and that whoever that person was who would get the food did not have as simple as like a water jug to wash her or his hands before they would touch the food to give out to the children. So something like a hand sanitizer or a thing would have been an easy fix. But the health department would come down and lay all these rules that a food bank is having to do all this. So day in, day out, I was seeing food on a good volunteering position time, but I was supporting indirectly a very nasty thing. And so that's one thing I wanted to say. Second thing is about, so the great thing, and also about the food that comes from all the grocery stores. They give away food for charity. Food Bank is very grateful for the food, and I'm grateful that the food is there, and I'm very happy to help. But the amount of plastic or the amount of packaging is incredible. It could be a small one piece of lettuce, and to sort that thing, it takes up to 4 volunteers per day when we sort out the food in the cold. And what we are sorting is tons and tons of packaged stuff. My son did juices, those colored sugary things. So they would come in those in the summer, and we separated them, re-separated them into another plastic container, and then it went into another container. So I want to say that those who think are doing charitable work might be promoting something else.
Right.
And this also happened at the flood recovery. So I just wanted to bring out that the grocery stores have to take a little more responsibility. Just giving away stuff as charity does not count. And one last comment about the 1,000 people meetings. I think that number should be brought down. And if that number is not down, for those who have 50 people, 20 people, 100 people, for example, I'm helping green up our cultural event for my community. So we have gone paperless on the tickets, and I'm trying to do these kind of towels. So between today and 2 weeks, I'm going to be stitching 300 of these. But I do want to know what options are there. I mean, like, what are the things I'll have to deal with? The questions came up was, how are you going to launder them? Do I have to launder them? Do I have to go to commercial grade? So these are the things I don't know. I'm trying to do a good thing, but I don't want to get have all these other things to deal with. So I want to know that.
On the zero waste events, there's a lot of groups that are doing that. The Green Sports Alliance is now rolling this out all over America at major stadiums. Zero waste events are happening all over the country now at colleges and art and wine festivals and every configuration you can imagine. Rick works on that with Earth Day, 60,000 people in San Diego every year. There's lots of information out there. On the website, there's some resource links to some information, and we can put on some other resource links about how to do that, even for small events. If you Google zero waste lifestyle, you'll find all sorts of individual stories there that are just incredibly inspiring. They do way better than me. That's why I said I got to confess I do waste.
Oh, this is all zero waste here. I mean, the linen's going to be re-washed.
So I just want to address the C&D process a little bit. Assuming that you really are going to move forward with the update related to the IECC, and I'm Sean Labar with the Senior Director of the Center for Resource Conservation. So if you are moving forward with the IECC and additional local mandate on the C&D side, I think just prudent to note that that you really need the reuse facility driving that process, because that's what changes the value structure of the materials all the way through the chain. Or else what you're going to run into when you introduce this regulation is that there'll be your code costs or whatever, the fee that they have to pay and get back at the end. But what you really have to look at is the underlying costs, and that you're looking about for the homeowner on their project, you're looking at $2 to $3 to landfill that material. You're looking at $10 to $12 to deconstruct that material. So they're paying $10,000 to $20,000 up front, which needs to be offset by the reuse facility through the in-kind donation process. That's also what's going to, you need to look at that also, because that process is what is going to drive the material into the integrated recycling facility. What it looked like to me from the phase 1 items that were going to go in kind of the low standard version of that facility was mostly kind of construction waste, so to speak, porcelain, things like that. You're not going to be able to drive material to that facility unless you're doing the reuse items, going to the reuse facility to create that value chain for the homeowner, or else there's just going to be no incentive for the homeowner or the contractor to take that material. The problem that you're going to have is you no longer have a resource.
and by extension would be to bail you out if you don't have a really clean program up front in regards to that.
When you say that 8 to 10 number, does that include the value of the material after you sell it?
No, so to just to bulldoze the house is $2 to $3 a square foot.
Right, to take it down brick by
Take
brick.
it down, fully deconstruction, you're looking $10 to $12 a square foot.
Including the ability to, including the revenue that would come in by selling this materials?
Nope. So then that
value-
material, that's where the value chain starts to begin.
Sure.
In most cases, when you use the reuse facility, the in-kind contribution to the nonprofit organization, you can eliminate the cost of the building removal altogether in most cases. So that's where the incentive comes in for the homeowner, and that's the process that's key, or you're going to have every contractor in the city up in arms about that.
I think that has just been the most incredible conversation, and we've got a lot of transcribing to do with all the notes.
It's only 21 pages.
So our work is cut out for us. Thank you very much again, and we really appreciate it again. The council will be talking about this at a November 26th study session, a work session, and then discussing it in a formal hearing on December 17th. And that is the opportunity, if you wish to come and speak to the council in advance of their discussion, then there's sort of an open mic opportunity to make your comments. Okay, thank you very much again, everybody, for joining us tonight.